Hello there, ICS3C folks. I think we're in our second to last note, this one on while loops, Unit 4, Lesson 7. Almost done. We've got a little bit more stuff to do. This is maybe our second last talk that we'll have, I think. And it's on while loops. We saw them on Code Academy, I hope, and we use while loops. It says when we aren't sure how many times a loop should execute, we use a while loop, also called a conditional loop. And I'll say why it's called a conditional loop in a second. The contrast is a for loop. Remember, we set a for loop up that it would loop exactly a certain number of times. Like it would be well, I goes from 1 to 10 or something like that, we would know that it would loop 10 times. A while loop, what we want to do is to keep executing while a condition is true or until a condition is not true. And we could think of it either way, and we get to choose to set it up the way we would like to. But that's why it's called a conditional loop. It's because there's almost like there's an if statement built into the while loop, and we'll see that very soon. So here's the syntax. Remember, the syntax of a structure is how we set it up in JavaScript. This is general. So we have while, and then in brackets, condition. And notice no semicolon there. A whole bunch of people are making mistakes putting semicolons where they don't belong. It's kind of like in JavaScript, there's lots of structures where the curly brackets take the place of the semicolon, right? We don't need that shape. No, that shape in here. We might have some in here. It says this stuff that gets executed many times. But in here also, at some point, condition should become false, or else you have an infinite loop. So we saw in a Code Academy, they said just we could put in while true, and then this would just keep looping, loop, 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 and just keep going, infinite loop. Loop an infinite number of times, and we don't want that to happen. Somewhere in this while loop, we should make it so the condition ends up false. So in these statements is going to be something that changes this condition from being true to false, or from false to true. And we'll see that soon. It says condition is any Boolean true or false expression. So that can be a comparison. It can be a Boolean variable. It can be, a greater than, a less than, an equal to, all those sorts of things. That's what condition means. And I say, for example, so let's try a Marx example. So for instance, let's get back to our code. We wanted to make a little while loop, which so it starts while, and then we have brackets there, and Notepad sets it up for us, right? And so I got to put a condition in here, and I'm going to make something like while, say for every Topic Tuesday thing, our marks starts at 0. I'm going to start it at 0. And while marks is less than 100, every marks that you get, if you get perfect, you get 15 more marks. So while marks is less than 100, I'm going to console.log marks. And then notice that if I just let this go, marks is less than 1,000 or 100 is true right now, right? That's true right now. So this would be true. It would log out the number of marks, which is 0, and then it would get to the end of the loop and go back up here, test it. Yeah, it's still 0. It's still less than 1,000, and loop, 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 infinite loop. Crash your browser. You'd have to start again. So in here somewhere, we need to be changing marks. So at some point, it's going to be more than 100. So for instance, we know every Topic Tuesday that we hand in, we get 15 more marks. So at some point, what we're going to do is this will end up being at some point more than 100. So marks equals marks plus 15. The first time through, it's going to be 0. It'll print out a 0. And then the next line, this will be 0, but then it's going to add 15. It'll it'll go to the end of the loop, back up here. This is still true, though, because marks, which is now equal to 15, is less than 100, and it'll keep going. Let me show you that. So I'm going to save this and run my JavaScript in not Firefox, in Chrome. Pull that up. Hopefully, hit F12. There it is. 0, and then 15 marks, and then 30 marks, and then 45 marks, and then 60 marks, and then 75 marks, and then 90 marks, and eventually it got to be more than 100, and it conked out of the loop. Notice, I could have calculated, I could have done some math and figured out how many times that was, but I just set it up the way I wanted to. I set it up so that my program would end when you got more than 100 marks on your Topic Tuesday projects or whatever. And this is a goofy loop, but you see what I'm talking about. And here, let's get this code into our note. So you can either copy or paste this. I'm wondering what it'll look like if I paste it. I like the different colors. Since I'm using Smart Notebook, I'm going to just take a picture of it using the snapshot tool. You're not going to be too upset with that, I don't think. That way we can talk about the line numbers if we want to. Great. And there's lots of reasons why we would use while loops, we'll see. So for instance, if we wanted to have a reminder connecting conditions and not, that these are things, if we wanted to make our code a little more complicated, if I wanted to, I could add conditions. So here, while less than 100 and let's see, where's my, that's and let's say before due date. Before due date, I'm going to make it a Boolean. Before due date equals true. So right now, this is one of our Boolean variables, and that has the value true. So if this is less than 100 and the Boolean value is true, then it'll still work. At some point, if that became false, and I could, before due date is set to be false, then maybe it'll conk out early. So if I save this now and run it, go back to my browser and restart it, refresh, there. Well, it ran it once while the marks was 0, and then changed it to false, and then was it true that marks was less than 100? Yes. But was it true that this was also? No, that was false. So this was true and false. So are both of those true? No. So this whole thing becomes false and it conks out of the loop. Remember, these things make our decisions more complicated. The other ones that we could do are or, 2 lines make an or, and I could do something like a not. This question mark is like a not, and let's say not past due. So while not past due, and past due is a new variable that I just made this up. Past due. And as long as it's not past due, I can keep adding marks. If past due is true, then that's going to be bad because we can't hint it in anymore. So I'm going to make that false. Do this, make this true. So it'll actually do this once, maybe. Save that. Let's refresh it just so you can see it. Oh, uncaught reference error. Past due is not defined. I have an error. What's the error? Oh, past date. A minute, past due. Save that again. Rest all makes errors as well. Whole bunch of them. Oh, there, it ran once and then clunked out just like we expected it to. So what am I demonstrating here is that just like in our if statements, we can make our decisions for while conditions a little more complicated using those symbols. So back in our note, add those symbols to your note. So that the two and signs is and, the two vertical lines is or, and an exclamation point means not. So if I wanted not equal, I'd have that symbol and then a couple of equal signs, a couple of three equal signs if I want it to be not equal to something. Okay, we have more to do. I'm going to stop the video and we'll have a part 2 here very shortly.